Move to this now, and the smoke and flames issuing from Parliament on Sunday the 2nd of January were devastating to witness. Not only the physical damage to one of our most important buildings, but symbolically disturbing to see the home of our democracy in flames after a very turbulent 2021. Of course, it took days to put out the fire. A suspect is behind bars and the investigation into the fire and the damage still underway. But the event has posed some very serious practical problems as well. For example, it means the State of the Nation address and the national budget speech due next month will not be held in the National Assembly. And I'm joined now by Moloto Mathapo, Parliament's spokesperson. Mr. Mathapo, thank you so much for your time. I wonder if you can give us any update on the investigation. For example, there were questions around the apparent non-working of the sprinkler system and also reports of a lack of floor plan, which would, of course, helped the firefighters.
Yeah, now, I think the matters that you are raising are relating to the content of the report of firefighters after their battle with the fire. We have said that we do not want to comment on the bits and pieces of information that emerges from any or that is relating to the fire. But that report is very important as part of the ongoing investigation by the Hawks and other enforcement agencies. So, because there are certain things in that report that the investigation that, for instance, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, which is responsible for certain parts of the maintenance of the buildings of Parliament, have already come out to say they agree with or to contradict some of the findings or some contents of the report. So, hence we are saying that it is important that we wait for the investigation to conclude so that we can have an idea as to what are the cause, what were the cause of the.
Yeah, I wonder if you can talk to me about. Sorry, your line just broke up just a moment ago. All right, so your line just broke, but I can hear you now. I wanted to just ask you a little bit more about whether you have an estimate yet of how much it's going to cost to repair Parliament and how long it's going to take.
Well, we don't have that information at the moment. As you will know, we did say that immediately with the fire. We said the requisites that come from the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, they have begun their work. We understand that they are towards their work is already nearing conclusion. So once that has happened, we should be able, the department will be able, that commission, those engineers who should be able to submit that report to Parliament. We should be able to know the details of how much it will cost, how long it will take to rebuild or to repair.
I want to ask you about the State of the Nation address. We know that it's been moved to the City Hall. I also read that the mace, which is carried in to the National Assembly for any major event, was spared in the fire, luckily. I wanted to get a sense from you about planning for the State of the Nation address happening in the City Hall and how much of the usual ceremony that we're used to around the opening of Parliament is actually going to be in place. So are we, for example, going to see the mace being carried into the City Hall, or would that not be appropriate?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Whenever there is a sitting of both houses of Parliament or the sitting of either of the two houses of Parliament, the mace as well as the rod, the mace is the one that is being used in the National Assembly and the rod in the National Council of Provinces. Those are symbols of our constitutional democracy. They represent a democratic Parliament and also signify that Parliament is in session and is competent to take legal but as well as constitutionally based decisions. So even though the joint sitting will be taking place outside of the precincts of Parliament, those two symbols will still be carried from both houses into the sitting of the of a sauna to signify the beginning of the joint session. So, but of course, with regard to the other part of the question, there will be some comprehensive briefing with regard to the state of readiness regarding the state of the nation address. Obviously, because it's being held outside of the precincts of Parliament, there will be some alterations here.
More details to come.
Yeah.
Do you know as yet where the national budget speech, which is happening a couple of weeks after SONA, where that's going to take place? Have you got a decision on that yet?
Yes. The decision has been taken by the presiding officers in conjunction with the chief whips of political parties in Parliament. The budget speech will take place within the precincts of Parliament in a meeting room that is called the Good Hope Chamber. So that chamber, as we are talking now, there is work that is being done to ensure that it is ready for the budget speech as well as subsequent sittings of the National Assembly.
All right. I want to ask finally a question on a more personal level, because I think it was a very emotional experience for all of us, but I would imagine particularly for someone like yourself who's so involved and so steeped in the tradition and understanding what Parliament's all about. When you realised there was a fire, you've already told us that the mace remained intact. What were you most relieved to find out had not gone up in flames? What articles for you really symbolise what our democracy is about?
Well, we are glad that particularly, the Library of Parliament, which, is over 300 years old, and it contains quite a lot of, information, historical books, documents, which although they would have been backed digitally, but, the physical nature of it, the print versions is something that is priceless, cannot be recreated. So we are happy that, that has not been affected. There are a number of, artworks. The gallery, the art gallery of Parliament has not been affected. There is a very important, 120-meter cloth of, the Kaiskama history that was done by about 100 rural women in the Eastern Cape. That documents the history of, that region from the 1800s up to now. That has not been affected. So, but of course, at the most personal level, closer to me, I'm just happy that the state-of-the-art, television studio that we created about a year ago has remained intact and has not been affected by fire.
Yeah, absolutely, because telling people what's going on in Parliament and getting the messages out about our democracy and the workings of our democracy is so important, but some priceless items that simply would have been irreplaceable if they'd gone up in flames. Thank you so much for that update. We really do appreciate it. Moloto Mathapo, Parliament spokesperson, telling us, of course, SONA is happening in the City Hall beginning of February, but the budget speech later in February is going to happen on the parliamentary precinct in the Good Hope Chambers.